It's Saturday, the 18th of May, and I'm doing the Saturday papers. I'm Granniopteryx. At least I'm going to be looking at one article from the Telegraph and one article from the Mail, and then mostly I think I'm going to be relying on the Sun. Now, I want to first of all talk to the people from Liverpool who wrote that they never read the Sun and they would unsubscribe from me when I read from the Sun. I can't live my life like that. And it is funny because when, it's just a weird thing that I do. When people tell me not to do things, I don't know why I find myself doing them a lot of the time. Now, there is a very good reason why people from Liverpool did feel that way about the Sun. It was in 1989. There was a football match at a stadium called Hillsborough in Yorkshire. The police mishandled the crowds horrendously. I mean, they really messed up, and that messing up cost many lives because there was a crush and people were crushed either against the barriers or, just against each other. I don't know how many people were, it says here 97 fatalities, 766 injuries, and a few people who lingered on in hospital for months, or in one case for years, with brain damage from oxygen deprivation. It was a horrible thing, but the most horrible thing about it was the behaviour of the South Yorkshire police, because they knew they'd messed up. They knew it was their crowd control that had caused the problem and the crowding. Instead, they told the newspapers, specifically, they gave the Sun newspaper an exclusive, that the Liverpool fans who'd come to see the match were drunk and behaved like a bunch of vandals and barbarians. And they made up stories about the way the Liverpool fans were behaving, which I'm not even going to repeat here, but they're just horrible stories of made-up behaviour. And then later on, it came out that the police had been feeding the Sun newspaper these stories, and they were all lies. Well, of course, the Sun finally, after it had been verified, the Sun apologised, but nobody in Liverpool forgave them for it. And I understand, but I do wish the people of Liverpool would have a little more tolerance. The Sun newspaper was simply repeating what South Yorkshire police had told them. And at that time, in 1989, people tended to believe what the police told them. Especially, I believe that the editor of the Sun thought he had a very good relationship with the head of the police. I'm not sure whether that was the Met or South Yorkshire. But anyway, he got taken for a ride. And the Sun certainly ripped into Liverpool supporters, but they have apologised. They were given the story. They didn't make that story up. So I think the Liverpool people, with their famed toughness and, well, even their sense of humour, although this is hardly a laughing situation, might be perhaps a little more forgiving. Right, so anyway, that's the Sun, and of course I'm not from Liverpool, so I don't feel that way. Yeah, the Sun is a rag, and I'll tell you something else. It is very much read by all sorts of people. I used to go to a working man's cafe for lunch almost, like about 3 times a week, 4 times a week sometimes. And there were always copies of the Sun on the tables. Very few of the Mirror, which is a left-wing tabloid, and I didn't see a Guardian there from one week to the next, even though it was supposed to be quite a posh area. People like to read the Sun. And it does have some interesting things. For instance, that story I read last week of the 100-year-old war veteran, they wouldn't have got a look in The Guardian. They're not interested in stories of people being honourable, decent, self-sacrificing and simply nice. They don't want those stories. But The Sun does. And so maybe, all those who had a go at me for reading a paper that's so much below my intellectual capabilities, well, actually, no. Sometimes they come up with something that's way ahead of our intellectual capabilities simply because they're just saying it how it is. Okay, but on this occasion, this is interesting. I mean, with an election coming up somewhere, then all the conservative type newspapers are running headlines like this: landlords face rent caps under Labour. So this is a Labour proposal that rent will be fixed. Yeah, that's going to really help the rental market, isn't it? Okay, the Telegraph runs that, and the Daily Mail runs this: Hunt warns that Hunt is our present Chancellor of the Exchequer. Actually, he's our present Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak is his glove puppet. But anyway, at the moment, he's called the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Hunt warns families face £2,100 bill to pay for Labour spending. So that's the Labour Party have come up with some sort of a budget or proposals, and Hunt warns that this is going to cost every family £2,100. So the rental market is going to go to pot. Every family is going to have to find another £2,100 if Labour gets in. And what does the Sun have to say? 3 stars force BBC Geo probe. Okay. Geo is Strictly Come Dancing or Strictly Dancing. That's like a sort of dancing competition type thing. Giovanni Pernice, at least 3 former dance partners made serious complaints about his behaviour. So that's the sort of thing that the Sun runs with a headline. So you can see why people think and maintain that it's a comic. You have to search in the Sun. And, I made a comment about it being surprisingly thick last week. I was actually talking about the width, not the intelligence. Look, I keep telling you, there's no point in being snobbish about it. The Sun deals with things that are important to a lot of people. And sometimes they say things in the Sun that other newspapers just will not say. And for that, the Sun performs a very useful service. Right, and this is page 3. Again, there is a semi-naked woman because that's page 3. But you see, it used to be that semi-naked woman wouldn't be wearing a bra, and this time she is. All right, let's see what else we have here. Okay, so yeah, the big single page spread is about the behaviour of this Strictly Come Dancing partner, whatever he's called. All right, and then there's some news here. Families will save another £116 a year on energy bills by the summer, price cap forecast suggests. The regulator's annual cap is expected to fall 7% from £1,690 to £1,574 by July. Well, all right then, I'll believe that when I see it. Our energy bill, our electricity bill this winter was quite a surprise. All right, and we've got here a story about the world's golf number one. World's golf number one. I hope that microphone's working okay. Right. Apparently some famous golfer's just been arrested. What for? He was, oh gosh, Now, this looks interesting. World #1 golfer Scottie Scheffler was charged with assaulting a police officer yesterday after being hauled from his car and arrested. The God-fearing family man, known as one of the sport's cleanest cut stars, was led to a patrol car in handcuffs as an officer barked, "Right, he's going to jail." He was charged with assaulting a police officer, criminal mischief, reckless driving, and ignoring instructions. So he was released in time to play his second round in the US PGA Championship at the Valhalla Golf Club in Louisville, Kentucky, and he blamed it on a misunderstanding. It would have to be quite a misunderstanding, wouldn't it? The wealthiest people. Oh, there, is that right? One of them is Paul McCartney, and then there's Dua Lipa and Harry Styles. Good Lord, the money. Paul McCartney's a billionaire. Harry Styles, he's got, according to them, 175 million. Oh, I could buy so many new saddles for that. And Dua Lipa, 90 million. Oh, there again, you see, they're not paying women as much. Right. What else do we have here? Okay, so they have something here about Labour's New Deal for unions may cause French-style chaos. Here's the page. Even in a country used to trade union protest and paralysis, the past few years in France have been chaotic. The economy has stagnated, and this is from somebody called Peter Allen, by the way, reporting from Paris. Who can forget the way the Gilets jaunes, the infamous yellow vests, brought major cities, including Paris, to a halt, causing millions of pounds worth of damage? Well, we've got our own version of Gilets jaunes here, haven't we? The Just Stop Oil people. Such chaos is certainly worth considering as Britain faces up to the prospect of its first Labour government in more than a decade. Oh, I am so terrified of a Labour government. And not because specifically of this, but the whole thing, their whole attitude, and the quality of many of the MPs that they have. Some of them are just dire. And they are elected in places where they're just elected as Labour MPs. Yeah, you know that one about you could put a donkey up there with a red rosette on it, and it would get elected. Short-term measures designed to stimulate the labour market and to get more young people active, such as 0-hour contracts, would be banned. All right, so nobody pretends that 0-hour contracts are a marvellous thing, but at least it does give employment. And that's going to be banned according to this paper. Migrant jackpot, it says here. Our asylum system is broken and putting intolerable pressure on public services. But one man is very far from unhappy. Graham King has made so much dosh from housing migrants, he's richer than the king. Thanks to Whitehall's serial cluelessness, government contracts are as good as a lottery jackpot, and Essex boy Mr. King has a 10-year deal making him £3.5 million a day from taxpayers and amassing him a £750 million fortune. Well, yeah, I mean, the whole system is broken. We know that, but this really brings it down to brass tacks. The blame lies, it says here, with supine liberal politicians, human rights campaigners, and procurement mandarins who vastly overpay for everything. Yeah, it's only public money after all, says the Sun. Plus, of course, weak, woke immigration officials who cannot tell a genuinely needy asylum claimant from all the obvious chancers and dangerous jihadists. Take, for example, murdering maniac Ahmed Alid, now spending his life in jail at our expense. He arrived in 2020 illegally, but unchallenged, claimed asylum from safe Morocco, and instead of being rejected and deported, was still being considered last October when he randomly butchered pensioner Terence Carney in revenge for Gaza while screaming Alan's snack bar. They say Jeremy Hunt accuses Labour of lying about Tory plans to axe national insurance. So what's happened is Hunt put forward a fiscal proposal. The Labour Party said it can't be used without cutting national insurance. And then they say, so that means the Tories are going to cut national insurance. So it's a lie. I mean, there will be cuts, but we don't know where from. And that's just a straight out and out lie. Oh, here's another one. D-Day in Normandy. They celebrate D-Day in Normandy. Oh dear, here. Down there, isn't it? Oh, that's it. That's it. Right, got it. So French officials put up hundreds of flags to mark D-Day in Normandy, but left out the British flag. They've done that all the time, though. I remember a big thing where it showed the D-Day landings. There was some sort of commemorative plaque, or maybe it was a coin that was struck, and it showed a lot of French soldiers going forward with guns, and then behind them American soldiers, and then right at the back, and then very, very tiny, there was like the foot of a British soldier showing behind them. And that was years ago. The French hate to admit that the British housed, they hosted the Free French forces. And they hate to, you know, the debt to Britain, they just hate to admit it. And yeah, you can understand why a lot of British people think the French aren't very nice. So this is a story about a teacher, a female teacher who had rather closer relations with her pupils than she should have done. And teacher sobbed yesterday as she was told she faced jail for having sex with 2 pupils in the same class. Oh, as I said, you know, you've got to have something wrong with you if you're a teacher and you fancy your pupils. Definitely something wrong with this fellow. The rapper, what's he called? P. Diddy? Whatever. Diddy. They refer to him here. I've seen the video of him beating up his girlfriend. Rapper Sean Diddy Combs is seen in security footage apparently beating up his then girlfriend in a hotel hallway. The US star appears to be kicking, he's kicking her. I could see that quite clearly. Kicking singer and model Cassie on the floor as she waits in the lobby for the hotel lift. Diddy, dressed only in a towel, is seen running down the corridor and chasing after Cassie, who's waiting at the lifts. The 2016 footage obtained by a US TV news channel then shows the rapper pull her head back and throw her to the floor. Yeah, it does. I saw the video. He repeatedly kicks Cassie. I mean, you know, he pulls her, he throws her down to the floor. She's obviously, at the very least, winded, if not concussed. And then he stands over her, kicking her. What a little shit that fellow is. He repeatedly kicks Cassie before dragging her across the floor. Later, the rapper appears to throw a vase. I didn't see that. I just saw him dragging her around to the end of the corridor. In November, Cassie sued him, claiming she'd endured a cycle of abuse, violence and sex trafficking until their split in 2018. What gets me is this. This was a video from 2016, and she split from him only 2 years later, 2018. I'm not saying she's to blame. You know, I think, isn't that called Stockholm Syndrome? But it just sort of proves how some people get so involved in a cycle of violence. They just can't see any way out. Now, this is Jeremy Clarkson, and this is his little think piece down here. As we all know, America is full of people who say they're Scottish or Italian, and I heard Tom Cruise this week saying he's Irish. So what does that make me? I was born to British parents in Britain, so I'm British. Or am I? I have beautiful, sexy blue eyes, I'm tall with masculine shoulders, and I'm from Yorkshire. So maybe if I go back far enough, I'm actually a Viking, which would make me Norwegian. But further back from that, my ancestors, like yours, emerged on the plains north of Johannesburg, which means that I'm South African. But then again, if I go even further back, I'm space dust, which makes me an alien. It's probably better then that we stick to the current system. You are what you are, and not what your great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were. Yep, I'm in full agreement with that. Okay, first of all, he celebrates that he has been called the world's sexiest man. For the second year in a trot, a poll of 2,000 women has revealed that the sexiest man in the UK is me. That is Jeremy Clarkson. Well, yeah, how drunk were they? Okay, so this is an article about Benidorm, where apparently people can get away with the sort of behaviour they can't get away with anywhere else. And according to the Sun here, the locals don't mind. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, this is a sad story. It's the funeral of Daniel Anjorin, the 14-year-old boy killed in a sword attack. Some horrible man went crazy with a sword in the street, and the poor kid here, he was one of the casualties. Now, underneath, Ukraine yesterday unleashed its biggest ever drone attack against Russia in response to more than 16-hour bombardment of Kharkiv. Can you imagine being under bombardment for 16 hours? More than 100 were launched at targets in Crimea, which is occupied by Vladimir Putin's forces, including an oil refinery hundreds of miles behind enemy lines. Naval drones also targeted Russia's Black Sea Fleet as Ukraine fought back in the wake of the Kremlin's advance on its second largest city. You know, a lot of this would all be over if Ukraine had the proper equipment. And here you'll see what I mean when you look at this. I read about this in another, probably in the Telegraph, in which the British built a river crossing, and the Americans tried to do the same thing, and they were still fiddling about when the British had got their troops over, because the British had a proper method of crossing rivers. Joel Self, commander of the US Bridging Company, conceded the British rigs are built for speed. It was part of a NATO exercise, and what they used were things called M3 rigs, and they're trucks that are built to turn into barges. So it just took, just under 20 minutes for the British troops to get across that river, while everyone else was floundering about on the wrong side of the bank. And it's just a matter of equipment. And there's a little article here about the man suspected of abducting Madeleine McCann, a little girl who was kidnapped from her hotel bedroom and has never been found. And he's complaining that while he's in prison, he's not getting enough cheese. And I did mention this asylum seeker, but we call him an asylum seeker. An asylum seeker who murdered a pensioner in revenge for Gaza. I think the pensioner was in a mobility scooter or a wheelchair or something. So you can see this guy, this asylum seeker, you can see the bravery of him, the toughness, can't you? He was in the street and he just stabbed Terence Carney 6 times while he was there in his mobility scooter. So this is his rationale. You see, and this is a rationale I haven't seen in any of the other papers. After his arrest, Ali ranted in Arabic that, Allah willing, Gaza would return to be an Arab country. Well, it is already Arab, but yeah, let's leave it at that. And then admitted Mr. Carney was innocent, but added, they killed children and I killed an old man. So that makes everything all right. As I've said before, the sort of people who make it to Britain are most likely the psychopaths of whatever country they came from. I'm not saying that those countries are full of psychopaths, but the sort of people who can fight their way over continents to get to be an illegal migrant would tend to be the most aggressive and least moral of the people in any society. And we are getting the very worst of whatever these countries are. Mind you, there is a lot to be said for the Muslim family setup, which doesn't help. I knew an Egyptian optician many years ago. We met socially. No, it's too long to explain, but anyway, we used to chat, and he told me that he used to go to various houses of quite well-off people. He said, and I have to tell you, he wasn't a Muslim. He said that all those Muslim kids, the boys, they were all psychologically disturbed. And that's because at the time when he was there, there were, you know, something like 4 wives in the house or whatever, and they were all fighting each other for ascendancy. And this made for a very unpleasant family setup. And so it wouldn't surprise me if there were more instances of this sort of lunatic rationalizations in those sorts of countries than there are here in this country. Although, you know, with the amount of marriage breakdown in this country, we might be heading there ourselves. So, kids' TV host here exposes the culture of fear on set. Well, it's another thing about how the BBC just let their stars, what used to be referred to as the talent. I mean, I was in the BBC, and you know, as a writer, and I'd hear people talking about the talent all the time, as if the writers didn't have any talent. Anyway, this young woman here says Rolf Harris squeezed my bum on Blue Peter, and boss Biddy, oh, just a minute, Biddy, hang on, that's, oh crikey, what's her name? Baxter, yeah, Biddy Baxter. She didn't take any notice of her, despite the fact that she's another woman. As well as Yvette, other Blue Peter presenters, including the late John Noakes, also complained about show editor Biddy's fearsome attitude. For Yvette, who went on to create the cable TV show Most Haunted and appeared in I'm a Celebrity, now 55, she recalls, you were always told, Biddy wants to see you in the beat room, which was like a store cupboard. She'd sit behind this desk and basically tell me I was fat, I was useless, and at one point she said, the only thing you're good at is being with the dog. They call it workplace anxiety nowadays, but it was really abuse. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell you which department I was in, but there's a very abusive relationship between people in the BBC. It wasn't a nice atmosphere at all. Can you read this headline? It's something about magnets and men's performance in the bedroom. I mean, where else but the sun? Magnets could prove attractive for flops in the bedroom, say scientists. Yeah, I'll bet some scientist said he had a magnet and the Sun's made a story out of it. A study found electromagnetic waves help men with a certain problem. So they had therapy for 30 minutes. Right, so it's not like you just get a magnet. You've got to go for electrotherapy. And this was a study in Argentina. Dr. Daniel Galimberti said muscle strengthening could be a long-term fix, whereas pills last only for a night. Okay. Right, well, any of you fellas interested, you can do a bit of research on the internet. I'm not going into it in any more detail. Right, well, this is quite upsetting. Sorry. Broke GB divers turn to OnlyFans. Apparently, they've run out of funding. Members of Team GB's men's diving squad have turned to subscription site OnlyFans to raise funds. 6 of the Olympic gold-chasing lineup are sharing sexy material with fans to raise money. They include gold medalist Jack Lauer, MBE, and Tom Daley's dive partner Noah Williams, who both uploaded content in the week they were picked to compete at this summer's Paris Olympics. Things have to be pretty bad. One selfie shows 3-meter ace Jack in a mirror, naked except for a towel round his waist. So he's not naked, he's wearing a towel. Come on. Sources within Team GB said bosses are very relaxed about the divers being on the site and that it was an issue of funding. I don't like that at all when people feel themselves forced into that sort of a situation. Frankly, there's something wrong. Now, here's a little article. You see the really important stories get the single column here, but they do get in the paper. You've just got to look for them. The post office box, it says here, blind to scandal injustice. Former post office box Paula Venables refused to believe there had been miscarriages of justice in the Horizon IT scandal. Just to recap, the post office started a computer system called Horizon, which they'd inherited from a failed company in the 90s. So the program was quite old to start with. And then Tony Blair's government thought that, everything had to be modern and bright and new and shiny and everything. And they insisted on this Horizon being pushed through. And Fujitsu was the company that took it over, and they knew there were problems. And everybody knew there were problems, including the post office. And what happened was that postmasters suddenly discovered that money was missing from, theoretical money was missing from their accounts. And that money didn't exist. But the program said it did. And some were lost their homes, some were jailed, some killed themselves, some died young, families split up. Whole families were shunned by local, neighbours and friends who thought there was a bunch of thieves. Terrible, terrible thing. And they knew about it as early, well, by 2015, it was pretty certain that there was serious problems, and nothing happened till 2019, mostly because the bosses refused to do anything about it, because they knew it was going to cost them money in the end. They were going to have to pay compensation. They were going to have to pay back the money they'd taken from the people that the people didn't owe. And I don't know why they thought that by holding off nothing could, what could possibly go wrong, that it would just disappear. I have no idea how they managed to think that. Anyway, Paula Venables, who was the head of the post office, it says here, her stubbornness was revealed in a damning review of the company's approach by finance chief Alistair Cameron. He said that the hundreds of wrongly convicted sub-postmasters wanted an apology as much as compensation, but his report said Paula did not believe there had been a miscarriage and could not have got there emotionally. This is a woman who the present Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, wanted as the Bishop of London. He thought she was a great person to be the Bishop of London, which shows you how much judgment he had. Now, here's an article about William Shatner. Declined offers to coldly go. There. Star Trek legend William Shatner says a firm once offered to freeze his body when he dies. The cryogenics company suggested they could bring him back to life if medical advances allow. The actor, goodness me, he's 93, who played James T. Kirk in the original sci-fi series and films, admitted he did consider the invitation. He said, "I was tempted because it's so futuristic, but I turned them down." He added that he would like to be planted like a seed to feed a redwood tree. He went on, "I read about that being done and it appealed to me. I would rather have a tree cover me than a freezer lid." I did hear a story. Now, it was one of the American founding fathers or some early American grandee. And what had happened was, some of you might know this story. When he died, a tree was planted. It might have been a cherry tree, but I don't think this was Washington. A tree was planted over his body. And then, a couple of hundred years later, they wanted, for some reason, they had to move the tree or they needed to dig up the ground. So they started digging up around the tree. And they discovered that the roots had grown to the exact shape of this man's body. It had been feeding off this man's, lots of minerals and vitamins and protein, all sorts of things that a good tree would need. And it had gone to exactly the shape of this man's body, which I think is rather wonderful, but I don't remember who it was. So maybe one of my American subscribers might know that story and could tell me. So there's an article here about, can a teenager last 7 days without a phone? Yeah, actually, you know what? It's all very well being snobbish, but I'm not sure how I could last without my phone. Okay, and now we're into the puzzle page. Mystic Meg, horoscope. Yeah, well, I'm not going to read those. Okay, I think that's it. Right, how to buy the right barbecue, how to get a decent shower stall. All sorts of cruises. gardening, and now it's summer. Yeah, golf. But here we're into the sport. Sport. Right, that's it. End of the sun. Okay. Well, let's see how this turns out. And again, I want to say, yeah, I know there are people in Liverpool who will not go near that newspaper. Just try and remember that it was Kelvin Mackenzie, wasn't it? He was taken for a ride by a lying, well, let's get this straight, by an inefficient, corrupt South Yorkshire police. Let's face it, they're the ones weren't. Hang on a minute, I just want to check this out. Let's just see. South Yorkshire Police, Rotherham. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. Rotherham is in the area of South Yorkshire Police. So we have a police group here who are liars, corrupt, inefficient, racist and sexist, and just sat back and drank tea while girls were being raped on their patch. And they made up this story about Liverpool fans and supporters at a football match. Is this a surprise? And they took Kelvin Mackenzie for a ride on that. I think it was Kelvin Mackenzie, wasn't it? If it wasn't, my apologies. They took him for a ride. And you guys in Liverpool, you should feel, well, at least sorry for that. I mean, sorry for what happened. And that wasn't the Sun's fault. They were taking the police at their word. Now, you might say they shouldn't, but, 1989, people still did trust the police, didn't they? That went well, didn't it? Okay, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.